What's up, beautifuls? I am outside today for this video and podcast. So if you hear any car sounds or music, I'm downtown Austin right now. So just ignore that. But hopefully, this mic will help. And today, the topic is all about God and strengthening your relationship with God, how strengthening my relationship with God changed my life. And it's something that I'm so passionate about and I feel isn't talked about enough on social media. And I honestly feel like the conversation of God is almost avoided, right? And there's a lot of reasons, and I might dive into that as well. We'll see. But these are just for a little disclaimer, this is just my personal experience and journey. I don't want any hate or backlash for not following other people's beliefs or not, following any sort of religion or something like that. This is just my personal way of connecting with God, and I feel that's how it should be, right? Like, it's not about the rules and about the how to's and like one way of thinking. It's about you feeling connected to God, and whatever is going to allow you to feel connected to God, keep doing that. Like, it all comes down to you just feeling his presence. And I say God, by the way, but this is just my personal word. So if God doesn't feel right for you, whatever does, source, universe, divine, whatever feels right to you. Um, don't feel like you need to conform to my beliefs. That's the whole purpose of this video, is to help guide you to what you feel and recognizing maybe that you're not alone and being open-minded when it comes to spirituality. And for starters, if you haven't seen my last video or podcast, definitely go check it out. It's my experience with ayahuasca, and this is what honestly, I would say, strengthened my relationship with God even further. And now I just have this deep knowing when it comes to my relationship with God. And so, anyways, if you haven't watched that video yet, definitely go check it out. I go into more detail into that experience and spiritual awakening, which kind of started all of this even deeper. But yeah, let's dive in. So, in my personal experience, what I've come to realize is we've all been searching for meaning. We've all been searching for answers that literally only God can provide, right? And so humans have created all of these religions and practices that make them feel closer to God or make them, feel aligned with what they're doing in their life when it comes to their relationship with God. There's so many things that are still unknown when it comes to how we came to be, why the world is the way it is, right? And like, we can search for meaning over and over and over again. But I think all in all, gratitude for just being here is the answer. Like, we don't have to know everything, I guess, is where I'm trying to get with this. And there's answers that only God really knows and can provide. And there's tons of, religions and spiritual practices that help people bring themselves closer to God through community and, worship and prayer and practices that just help you put your focus on God. And my personal belief is there's not one way of doing it, right? Like, whatever makes you feel connected to God, whatever helps you worship God, whatever helps you feel gratitude for your life, like, keep up with that, and it doesn't have to be this one way of thinking, right? And that's kind of how I've taken it. I grew up in a Christian family, and I wouldn't say we were like super, like diehard Christians though. Like, we didn't really go to church. We prayed and we believed in the Bible. But it wasn't something that we'd like regularly talk about or practice, right? Like, there wasn't any rituals or anything like that that we would partake in, which is perfectly fine. However, I never really felt truly connected to God. I always felt this question mark around God, and I would pray, but I would always question, everything. I never really had this deep knowing God is real, God is there, God's presence is always around me. I never had this deep knowing of that. And I would pray and pray and pray. However, I just wanted that true relationship and connection to God. And I never truly felt connected to God, especially the more I would learn about religion and all of these things. It almost pulled me away from God in some aspects, which I hate to say because that's the whole purpose, right, of religion, is to bring you closer to God, right? But in my personal experience, that just wasn't the case. And I realized that it came down to my actual devotion and connection and faith with God, my individual relationship with God. It wasn't about this big view of what the world sees God as and what, other people see God as and their relationship with God, because that's what you grow up thinking, right? Okay, I'm just going to, a lot of the times we just follow, right? Like the authority figures in our life or the people we grew up with, right? And it can be that kind of shapes how we believe going into our adulthood and whatever, right? And so that's what happened for me. I even went to private schools, like Baptist private schools, and like they would talk about God. They would have Bible study groups and like they would have, ceremonies and stuff. And I still just, there was something missing. It wasn't until I hit my rock bottom at the end of high school that I just started praying again. I started praying because I lost my prayer. I lost my prayer for a while through a lot of challenging times in my life. And it wasn't until I hit this rock bottom that I started praying again. And when I started praying, I started getting my prayers answered. And I started healing and I started feeling the strength to grow and better myself. And I put that trust in God's hands. And I would say that was the first time I really felt connected to God again. I really felt this connection. However, I still had those question marks. I still had this, like, because I fell off. I did fall off. I prayed for a little bit and then I fell off once things started to get good, which is, I'm sad to say, but I'm just being real with you guys. Like, I was only relying on God in the times that I needed him, right? Like, I only relied on God in those times where I was really struggling. And I fell off. I was doing good, whatever. Like, I was living my life, feeling happy. And I realized in this last year, 2022, I realized I need a relationship with God. Like, that's something that I was just lacking. I actually started to pray again. I started to pray again and really connect with God. And this is also when I started meditating consistently and just having that time to just sit in gratitude and stillness. And I recognized really fast that God is all around. And it wasn't until I had my ayahuasca experience, which ayahuasca, by the way, contains DMT, which is the spirit molecule. So it's also one of the most powerful plant medicines there are out there, psychedelics. And it completely changed my life. Definitely go check out that video if you haven't already. I go into more detail on that. But during this experience, I truly felt God's presence all around me for the first time in my life. From then on, I just had this deep knowing, this deep, deep knowing that he's real. He's there. He's always there, and he's always been there. And I was able to see how he showed up in my life, how he's guided me through this whole journey I've been on, how he's always been there through the whole thing. And the hardest thing for me to personally do was surrender my control over to God. And I realized that that's what I needed my whole life. I have a really strong controlling shadow, which leads me to wanting to do everything myself, being super independent, like hyper independent. And then also feeling the need to like control others, right? And in the whole situation, like everything needs to be controlled. I chose to surrender. And when I chose to surrender, meaning I'm no longer just creating on my own, I'm no longer living just on my own, I'm co creating with God. Everything started to fall into place. I started to be guided day to day. Synchronicities and opportunities just started to pop up in my life. I truly felt that every single thing happens for a reason, even these things that I used to get so upset about, so angry about, and it would just destroy me. I now see purpose in it all. The more you strengthen your relationship with God, the more you realize that life is always happening for you, not to you. And you're just able to trust and have this peace and knowing that no matter what, you're gonna be okay. And even when we die, we're gonna go back to being with God, source, universe, whatever you want to call it. And his presence is just I realize it's all I truly need. So I try and align myself with unconditional love. And that pulls me closer and closer to God. And I'm very open-minded, when it comes to practices and like ways you can strengthen your relationship with God, and even religions, like it's interesting to me to learn about them, but I just don't internalize them anymore. And I just feel out what feels best to me. And that's really what I feel we all ought to do. Honestly, it's like feel out what feels best to you, what actually brings you closer to God and your true self, your true nature, which is love, right? If it doesn't bring you closer to love and God, then it's probably not aligned with you, right? Like the whole purpose of religion and spiritual practices is to guide you closer to your true self and God. We are all energy, okay? We are connected to everything that exists, and God is everywhere. God is in everything. Like he literally dwells in everything. His energy, his presence, like he created it all, right? And so with that, and this is again my personal way of thinking and believing, but he's everywhere and we're connected to everything he created. So with that being said, you're never alone. He's always there. It's just about tapping into it and just being grateful and having gratitude and love towards everything that comes into your life. And we have the gift of free will, right? Like, yes, God is always guiding us and like he has a plan, right? However, we can veer off. We can veer off of that plan. We can veer off into our own ways of living and being, which a lot of the times just ends up giving us roadblocks and like trying to steer us right back to the original, plan. Is what at least I've noticed in my own experience. And he'll give you signs, he'll give you guidance to get back to where you will feel aligned, right? Because we do have this free will and we make our decisions every single day. We make so many decisions every single day. We have control over a lot. However, God has control over the bigger picture, and he's going to continuously try and guide you to what you truly need. And this was the hardest thing for me to surrender to, was this idea that I'm not doing this all alone. I'm not in full control. God is in control of a lot of this. And me surrendering that control over was the most freeing thing I could possibly do. And I recognize that's what I needed to do all along, is just trust and have faith. And the more I trust and have faith, the more I'm just pulled closer and closer to God and closer to my true self. And we ultimately, since we do have this free will, we have the choice of whether or not we trust and whether or not we want to like co-create, right, with God. And so a lot of the times that's what I personally believe why people end up doing these terrible things, right, to other people or to themselves or whatever, is they're not truly connected and faithful and trusting and listening to these signs, listening to this guidance, listening to their intuition, right? It's it's guiding them in this direction of destruction rather than love. And so again, the more we can align with love, the more we align with God, and God's just going to continue to guide us in the right direction. And something I've come to realize as well is independence is seen as a strength, right? Here on earth. And that's something I really internalized as well, was that me being independent means I'm strong, means I'm, you know, worthy or whatever. And I realized that me letting God in once again, that makes me strong. That makes me worthy. That makes me feel the best I've ever felt. And what being independent, feeling like you can do everything yourself, right, can do is actually cause you to feel like you can't ask for help or be vulnerable. And it can even isolate you, right? And we choose whether or not we want to live an isolate, independent life, or if we want to co-create with God. And so from my experience, co-creating with God is the best thing I've ever done. I lived a lot of my life thinking I was doing everything alone, thinking I was doing everything, trying to control everything, and I was just unhappy. I wasn't truly at peace. I never felt like I was getting to where I wanted to be. And when I finally surrendered that control and realized I'm co-creating with God and I'm never alone, everything again really started to work in my favor and guided me exactly where I needed to be. And even in the times where I thought it wasn't working in my favor, it ended up working in my favor. Like maybe I thought something was going to go a certain way and it didn't, but then it ended up working out even better than I could imagine. And so surrendering that control is the best thing I've ever done. Another thing that surrendering this control can do is it takes so much weight off your shoulders. Literally, I mean, it just like took thousands of pounds off my shoulders, and I realized I don't have to worry. I don't have to worry about anything. Yes, I'm here to take action. Yes, I'm here to listen to guidance and signs. And like, I'm not saying just, hey, God, like, do your thing. Like, you get me exactly where I need to be. It's a co creating process. However, now I'm not doing it alone. I can trust something greater than me to guide me and give me that strength and courage. And I'm there to also pick myself back up on the days where I'm really needing that extra support, right? But it's a co-creation. I hope this video helps anybody who feels this deep calling to devote their life to just trusting and having faith. If you're constantly worrying, if you're constantly anxious, if you're constantly feeling fear, right? Like that for me was my sign. I needed to devote my life to faith and trust and peace, because it's a choice. You can choose to walk your life alone, or you can choose to walk and co-create with God, universe, source, whatever you want to call it. It's your choice. In my way of believing, there's no right or wrong. Like, there's no right way to go about how you strengthen your relationship with God. As long as you are strengthening your relationship with God, you're gonna be happy. And that's what I've come to realize. So, again, I don't want any backlash or hate for not following any sort of one way of thinking. I really am just an open-minded being who is here to spread love and hopefully guide people closer to God. I feel it's part of my purpose and my mission because it's been a huge piece to my journey that has honestly changed my life in ways I can't even explain. Strengthening my relationship with God has given me this peace that is just undescribable. I cannot explain the peace that I'm experiencing here, especially being a person who struggled with anxiety disorder my whole life and multiple disorders, and somebody who struggled with never feeling enough. And when I finally let God into my life, I feel enough because I recognized his unconditional love and how everything is connected and everything has God's presence if you just sit with it and acknowledge it and pour gratitude and love into everything you do. So I hope this was helpful, and I know this was a topic that isn't talked about a ton, and I'm here for anybody who wants to chat deeper. I'm always here.